good day to brew, baby? What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millzy, back with Hometown Commander, and we are back for another episode of Millzy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 of the deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest and our quest to out-brew your favorite Magic Channel. Man, this week we are starting what I'm calling Humans Week for Lord of the Rings. This week we are doing all human tribal lists, starting today with 2 colors, going up to 5 colors on Friday. And I'm really excited because the Lord of the Rings set has introduced so many great new humans, and so I think it's made me just want to brew so many new human decks. I have brewed 2 humans decks and tried in my time. Both of them are really fun, and one of them we're going to talk about today. I put in kind of a disclaimer in a video last week that I was going to post probably one of the strongest deck lists I've ever posted on the channel, and it's this one. Winota is a commander that is played in CDH. This is not a CDH deck. This is not designed to be that, but this is designed to be a darn strong deck. If that's the kind of thing you're looking for, I would love for you to stick around and see what you think of Winota. If it's not something you want to experience, I apologize, then this video is probably not for you. This is a deck that I've ran for a long time and then put on the shelf, and I've just updated it for Lord of the Rings. So it's more of a personal brew than a Millzy brews, but I thought, why not take 2 color humans, do something other than Kyler, and do it in Boros, which is just a fun color combination. So Winota, for anyone who's not aware what Winota does, says whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6. You may put a human creature from among them on the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible with no turn, but the rest of them on the bottom. So we're trying to get non-human creatures on the battlefield, attack, bring in those humans, tapped and attacking. And so many of our humans are going to be doing 2 things. One, great things in the end of the battlefield, or gaining us more value in the end of the battlefield. But not every human is going to come down and break the game wide open. We want some humans to come down, bring value with them, and then the next turn, kind of compound our attack as we go forward. I've seen plenty of games with this deck where you get 9 or 10 non-human creatures that are attacking, and you may end the game in that combat. I've seen games where you only have 2 or 3 creatures on turn 4 when you get Winota down and you attack, and just build value over turns. The deck's going to probably fold to a board wipe, but we're trying our best to play as much protection as we can, and you'll see that as we get in to the list. So let's start down in the lands. Only playing 33, and as you can see, we're playing some more expensive lands here, playing the Ancient Tomb, playing the Urza Saga. Inkmoth Nexus, Mishra's Factory, both turn into creatures. Den of the Bugbear can turn into a creature. Blinkmoth Nexus can turn into creatures. So for a very small amount of mana, they turn into a non-human creature that we can attack with and generate a Winota trigger. Sokenzan can make some tokens as well, which is pretty great, but mostly we're trying to get it down, and Cavernous Souls is perfect for something like Winota or any of our other humans, because then they cannot be countered if we use mana. Not a lot to talk about in the lands, because the deck curve is pretty darn low, especially for our non-human creatures. That's really what we care about, and that's the goal. Get to 4, get Winota down, and get swinging. In the enchantments, we're still running a teeny bit of the stacks that make Winota really powerful commander, but we're not playing a ton of them. We're going to slow our opponent down slightly, but we're not going to play the CDH route of Winota where we're only going to stack our opponent. So we're playing Deafening Silence, and we're playing Roll of Law. My goal with these 2 isn't to shut my opponents out of the game. My goal with these 2 is to, once we get a lead, keep the lead. I mean, that's, I think, what this deck is really just designed to do. Get a lead, keep it, finish the game. Authority of the Consuls is going to help our opponent's creatures come in tapped so they can't block. But to be 100% honest with this deck, by turn 4, when Winota gets down, not too people are going to have creatures to block. But the hope here is that we can get some of them out of the way. Determined Iteration's a new card I like, because at the beginning of combat, we get to make a copy of a token we already control, and it gets haste, so hopefully that's another Winota trigger that we have. And then Reconnaissance to give all of our creatures vigilance means we can untap them into the combat. Now, we are playing Throne of the God Pharaoh, so if we have Reconnaissance out, we won't want to, because we want to deal the damage from the God Pharaoh. At the beginning of our end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures we control, and this can get out of hand. I've dealt 12 with this, I've dealt 20 with this, so the God Pharaoh can do a lot, and that's what we love it for. Arcane Signet, Boros Signet, Soul Ring, Talisman, and the Crypt, all for mana. I mean, in all reality, the deck's going to rely on just trying to get a good hand, which happens most of the time, and get Winota down on 4. And after that, it's just regaining value. Now, I have in the past survived board wipes of the stack. It's not a deck that once you get board wiped, you're dead. But it certainly is one of those decks that is going to try to put as much resilience up as possible. And that's where a lot of our new spells that we've seen come in handy. Clever Concealment's perfect for this kind of deck, because if we have enough creatures untapped, especially with that Reconnaissance out, we can Clever Conceal our whole board and protect it. Flawless Maneuver, if we have Winota out, can give them all indestructible, hopefully to get around your more natural board wipes. Of course, not going to protect us from Farewell, not going to protect us from sacrifice board wipes, but I think we're trying to protect ourselves from as much as possible. Same thing with Boros Charm, right? Give everything indestructible, try to hold that out. We're playing the deflecting spot to try to protect Winota, because again, Winota is the reason the deck works. Winota's the trigger. She doesn't have to attack, but she has to be there, so we have to protect her. Path Exiles and Swords from removal, Secure the Waste can make some tokens instant speed. Same thing with Raise the Alarm. You'll notice the deck likes a lot of these 2 or 3 mana token effects, because on turn 2, if we can get 2 tokens down, on turn 3, if we can get a couple more tokens or a couple more non-human creatures in the battlefield, it means on turn 4 we might have 3, 4, 5 attackers to attack with, and that becomes really important. So we're playing Clowning Around because there's a chance to get us a 3rd token instead of 2, Dragon Fodder, Krenkov's Command, and Raise the Alarm, or the classic 2 mana, for 2 tokens, and then Whirling Outburst 3 mana for 3, which is great. Jessica's Will for the mana, and then Martial Coup can get us tokens and wipe the board. And those tokens none of these tokens are humans. That's why we care. None of these are humans, so they're all going to trigger Winota. Now, as we get up into the creatures, because unsurprisingly, this is most of the deck, because again, the goal is try to get humans out of our deck. We're playing a ratio. I try my best to kind of use the algorithm-y type ratios to make sure that if we flip the top 6, we always hit humans. We're playing a lot of humans, but we're also playing just a few non-humans. So what I want to do is we're going to go through the humans, and then we're going to go through we're going to go through the non-humans, and then we'll go through the humans. So the first is Archon of Emeria. Here's another one of your mini stacks pieces. Each player can't cast more than 1 spell each turn. Non-basic land to your opponent's control. Enter battlefield tap. Again, we don't care about casting spells because we just want to go to combat and get our humans onto the battlefield. Dockside, here's another one of your examples of this being a pretty tip-toppy power deck. Dockside, again, we really honestly don't care as much about Dockside giving us the treasures. It's just a 1/2 that isn't a human. So it may give us a few treasures, but it's a not human that can attack. 2 of my favorite creatures in this deck that generate so much value over a few turns is Goblin Rabblemaster and Legion Warboss. Both these do the same thing at the start of your combat. You get a 1/1 Gobbo with haste, and then you swing that with that Gobbo. Now, Goblin Rabblemaster says that all goblins you control attack each combat if able, which we want them to do anyway. We really want the Winota triggers to happen. Now, Rabblemaster will get a buff for each attacking goblin, whereas Warboss will just try to mentor the goblin that came in this turn. Give it a buff that way. One of our other favorite Gobbos in the deck is Legion Loyalist. This card could potentially end a game. It says when it and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control gain first strike and trample until the turn and can't be blocked by creature tokens. This is a lot more beneficial than you think it is, because creature token decks are very popular, and they're also the hardest thing for our deck to get through, right? A bunch of 1/1s and we don't normally naturally have trample. It's going to be very hard to just get through. What Legion Loyalist is going to do is it's going to give our whole board first strike and trample. Now, the only downside of Legion Loyalist is it's only going to give first strike and trample to the creatures that are out when the trigger goes off, but I don't think we really care. I think that's good enough still, because everything that Winota is bringing in with indestructible, and they still can't be blocked by tokens. So I think you still get a lot of the benefit overall of what we're trying to do. Phyrexian Censor. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-Phyrexian spell each turn. Non-Phyrexian creatures and a battlefield tapped. Again, here's our play on stacks. I'm trying to push as much of the stacks on creatures as I can, because I feel like it makes it a teeny bit more fair for it to be on a creature than on a non-land permanent, like an enchantment, because I think it's a lot easier to get rid of creatures, right? Selfless Spirit. Sack it to give all of our creatures indestructible. Here's a little bit more of that protection. We actually got a new human as well that does a very similar thing, and we'll talk about that when we get to that. Skrelv, it can't block, but that's perfectly fine. Pay that Phyrexian white, choose a creature, and that creature gets toxic 1 hexproof from the color and can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. Love it. This can protect Winota. This can protect a lot of things. Soulless Jailer. Permanent cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast non-creature spells from graveyard or exile. This is going to shut down graveyard decks. This is going to shut down Exile decks. This should shut down Cascade. This shuts down a lot of things just to stop our opponents in the process. And then I realized I missed Elvish Norn. Elvish Norn is one of those cards that probably is a little too expensive for a deck like this in the sense that it's 4 mana. But I love that first effect. Whenever source and opponent controls deal damage to you or permanent you control, that controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1. So anytime they block one of your creatures, pay 2 life or lose 2 life or pay 1. Anytime they attack you, lose 2 life or pay 1. What I like about this is you're going to get into situations with this deck. I'm just going to warn you straight up. We're going to put a ton of humans down on the battlefield, and your opponent has to decide, I have to chump, right? Your opponents are going to have to chump eventually if they have it. And what this card's going to do is it's going to basically make it hurt just as much. They're going to get hurt by chumping. And I think that's what the goal of this section is. We need to find these things that are going to help us finish, and I think Elvish Norn's just one of them. I do think it's a little more expensive than it probably needs to be. I think ratio-wise, you probably just pull this out for another 2 mana spell, like Servo Exhibition or whatever have you. But I like the idea of having some fun creatures in this deck and not making this just laser beam. You know what I mean? This is a deck I've had so much fun with because it's everything I want out of a Boros aggro deck, and I love seeing it get a giant new facelift. To look at this deck from what it was when I built it in 6 months to a year ago, it's just cool to see so many new humans, so many fun humans that do different things. So let's jam through the humans. Adeline, its power is equal to the number of creatures you control. If this comes in off of Winota, it's going to be huge. Now, you won't get its bottom trigger for it coming in off of Winota's ability, but you just have a star for. It's going to be huge, probably, coming in. And now your opponents have tried to block it. But if it's out, you get a 1/1 human attacking each player. And it's not bad, but it's just going to be another creature that you have to factor into combat. Adriana has melee, and then other creatures you control have melee. This is better if she's out at the start of combat instead of coming down in off of Winota, but I think we need to plan for both. We can't just plan for everything coming in off of Winota. Like I said, we're going to have those turns where things come in off of Winota, but then they're going to have that next turn where we swing again, and we want abilities to use for that. One of the single best humans to come down off of Winota is Angrith's Marauders, a 4/4 for 7 that says if you source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, just double that damage to that player instead. This is going to knock players out when this comes in off of Winota, because the problem now becomes you have a bunch of 4/4s, let's say a 2/2 that's going to do 4, 4/4 that's going to do 8. That stacks up. And not only that, but if you have something like a couple of creatures down below that we're going to talk about who come in and maybe have evasion, who are going to be harder to block, well, now it's going to hit harder and harder. This pairs so well with a bunch of the ways we have to give our creatures double strike or things like that, because now if you don't block it, you could potentially take it twice. So it gets pretty great. Baragon to the guard. So here's one of our new ones. When it or another human enters battlefield under your control, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance on a turn. Well, vigilance isn't much of a help when we've already attacked. What I like about Baragon here is, think about it. If Baragon's already out, it's already been gotten off Winota, or we play Baragon in our main phase before we go into attack. Now we're giving everything vigilance and they don't have to tap. Yes, this is a non-bow Throne of the God Pharaoh, but I don't think we care. I think it's just about doing the damage, right? Blade Historian, a card that's been here for a long time. All attacking creatures have double strike. This is great because this gets around have them having to, I'm pretty darn sure this gets around having them to have to declare. So everything that comes in off of Winota will get double strike as well, and it's going to make the game even harder for our opponents. Boromir, Warden of the Tower, is one of the ones we're excited about because, one, it's going to help shut down free spells, but two, we can sack it to give everything indestructible on the turn, and then the ring tempts us. So Boromir is great because it's another copy of this sack it, give everything indestructible effect, and protect our board, hopefully. Bruce Tarl, when it comes in, or attacks, we can give any creature double strike and lifelink until end of turn, which is great. We give it to a bigger creature and just gain a ton of life back. I absolutely love it. And then we'll talk about a creature down below who's just going to end up gaining us more life than we need. Combat Celebrants in the deck, because we have a couple ways to make infinite copies of Combat Celebrant. My favorite is Mirage Phalanx, but there's a couple other ways to do it. Mirage Phalanx says, his soul bond, so when it or another creature comes in, if neither of them are paired, they can pair together. And it says, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a token that's a copy of the creature, except has haste and loses soul bond. So we bond this to Combat Celebrant, and then every one of those extra combats that Combat Celebrant makes, we get another copy of Combat Celebrant. And now we're just going to take as many combats as we need in the game. Jaren has read a new card from March of the Machines, and this seems darn good. It's a human 5/4. It says whenever it attacks, look at the top 6. You may exile legendary, put the rest on the bottom until the end of turn. You may cast the exile card without paying its mana cost. This could be looked at as kind of a nombo with Winota, but what I like about this is we get the thing out of the way, get through combat, play it after combat, and kind of wait for the next turn. Now, this doesn't get around timing restrictions, so if we pull a creature, we can't flash that creature in if it doesn't have flash. So we kind of be a little bit careful, but I think we can stack the triggers, obviously. If this and Winota attack at the same time, we could do all of our Winota triggers first and then do Jaren Hazaret. So it's not like it's going to get in the way, but I think it's a good card, and it kind of acts as a secondary commander in some ways. Dranith Magistrate. This card garners a lot of hate in our format, mainly just because it stops people from playing their commanders. But I try my best to only use Dranith Magistrate in a deck like this if I know I'm going to finish the game out. Because what you don't want to do is sit Dranith Magistrate on a board for 7 or 8 turns and people can't play their commander. It's just going to not lead to a good time. But again, it is also what the deck is trying to do. So I feel like it more than fits. Duke Older Raven Guards probably could be replaced by a myriad of other humans, and that is a pun. But I like it. Beginning of combat, we pick another creature you control. It gains haste and myriad until end of turn. So when it attacks, we get a copy attacking each other opponent. This is mainly great for something like Silverwing Squadron or some of our non-legendary humans, of course, because if we pick a legendary human, they're immediately going to die. But if we pick a human that makes tokens when it enters the battlefield, well, then that's pretty great. Something like Evangel of Heliod. On enters the battlefield, we get all those 1/1s equal devotion to white. Now, this is a bad example because Evangel of Heliod isn't legendary. But again, if it was legendary, like something like Lena Selfless Champion, well, we get the tokens, immediately sacrifice them to the legendary rule, and then we're still up the tokens. So I love it. Esper Sentinel would get us a little bit of draw. Evangel of Heliod, again, making 1/1 soldiers for devotion to white, and those soldiers aren't human, so the next combat, they're going to trigger Winota. Gerard. When it dies, exile and return to the battlefield all artifact and creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from the battlefield this turn. So if someone does wipe up when Gerard's out, everything comes back to the battlefield. Again, here's some more protection for board wipes that we need. Golden Knight Commander. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, creatures control got +1/+1 until end of turn. This kind of gives us, unfortunately, the Cthulhu's Crusade mess that ends up happening in Commander, where you have a bunch of creatures come in. The problem with here is I had a game where I had 14 Winota stacks on the trigger, or triggers on the stack, and a Gold Knight Commander out, and I basically had to pull out D20s and go, okay, this creature got 13, this creature got 12, and so that's the only downside of Gold Knight Commander, but it's also just going to help you in the game. Imperial Recruiter can get us any creature with power 2 or less. We love the Loyalist. We love either of these two. We love the Skrull. There's a lot of things we love off the Recruiter, but the Recruiter just helps getting things to our hand, especially in the early game. Lena making tokens when she comes in, then we can sacrifice her to give all creatures with power less than Lena's power indestructible on the turn. So that's a lot of creatures. Most of the time it's our tokens, but it's a lot of our humans as well. Lena's a 3/3, so there's some other things that can get protected. We talked about the Phalanx. Mural. Just going to stop people from using things on our turn, so hopefully we can get through those combats. And when she attacks, she makes soldiers, and those soldiers aren't human. So again, the next turn we'll be able to use them and get the Winota triggers. Niali feels like a card perfect for this deck. This came out in those Phyrexia commander decks. Attacking creature tokens you control have double strike. Well, that's great. Now our tokens have double strikes. Now they're even better because most of the time those tokens are just sitting ducks that are going to wait to get blocked. And then whenever one of our tokens you control attack a player, exile the top card of your library. During any turn you attack with a token, you can play that card. So if she comes in off Winota, it's not going to go off that turn. But any future turn, it'll go off that way. Audric, The classic commander finisher Odric. Whenever it and at least 3 other creatures attack, you choose which creatures block this turn and how those creatures block. So if it attacks, you can choose none of your opponent's creatures to block, and of course you will end the game at that point. Now Odric can't do this coming off of Winota. You'd have to have him attack for that. A new human that kind of fits this combat celebrant plan, but also just helps us a ton because it can make copies of some other creatures that can get us a bunch of value is Orthion, Hero of Lava Brain from Martin Machine. For 1 in a red, we can just create a token that's copy of another creature. It gains haste, and we sack it beginning of the next end step. And we can only do it as a sorcery. For 9 mana, we can make 5 copies of something. And same thing, they gain haste. Probably, again, perfect for combat celebrant, but we could just use this on a lot of other things. We could use this on Baragon. We could use this, preferably we want to do this on something that's non-legendary, so like, find a non-legendary human like Evangel of Healer. Just makes a bunch of things when it comes in, but clearly we want to do it to combat celebrant. But I think it's here because it's going to make a bunch of value with some other things, or we can find ways to make things and do good things. We could do it to Awen, who we'll talk about in a second, get a bunch of protection from things. Again, I like it. I like the utility. I mean, I think you could just use, in the same way you could use Jaxus or something like that to do it. I think Orthion's fun, and hey, it could be something where it doesn't ever work the way we want it to. We just pull a better human into the slot. Rick is a card I have a love-hate relationship with. Is probably my single favorite human printed over the last couple of years because it's just so darn good. When it comes in, you picked from First Strike, Vigilance, and Lifelink, and you pick 2 of them. All of your humans have those, and as long as you have 4 more humans get +2/+2. What I like to do with Rick is pick First Strike and Lifelink. It comes in even off Winota and gives your whole board First Strike, Lifelink, and +2/+2. I've gained 60 life off of this before in 1 combat, and then at that point, your opponents are going to have to kill you with commander damage. There's going to be no other way if Rick untaps that you're not just going to continue to gain a ton of life. Silverwing Squadron, probably my pick for one of my favorite humans to come in off of Winota. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control, and whenever it attacks, we make a number of 2/2 White Knight creature tokens with vigilance equal to the number of opponents you have, which isn't very many. But this comes in. I've seen this consistently come in as a 10/10 plus. You pick an opponent, this comes in tapped and attacking. If they don't have a flying blocker, eek, especially with Blade Historian or Bruce Tarl, like this is going to get tough to deal with. Tajik is basically just in here to protect us from damage-based board wipes or damage. It says prevent all non-kappa damage that would be dealt to other creatures you control. So Tajik will still die, but it'll protect everything else. That's important. We can't get the Blasphemous Axe. We can't get the Brotherhood Zens or the Abrade. Just things like that. The damage-based things. It's just going to help, and it's non-combat damage, so it's not like we get protection in combat, but it's just helpful. And then the Mentor can help with her little small tokens. Thalia, Heretic Cathar. Creatures and non-basic lands your opponent's control come untapped. Again, here you go, another example of just that slight bit of stacks we're going to put on our opponents, and it has First Strike, so that's not bad either. Theoden, starting our brick of these last 3 humans from the set. Whenever it or another human enters the battlefield, target creature gains double strike on turn. This is perfect when it comes in or if it's already on the battlefield. Again, handing out double strike is going to get really important. Now, the primo would be if we have trample too, but again, trample is a very hard ability to get in these colors. I really like it. Aomer, Marshal Rohan is a card that seems like it's going to be a ton of fun if we can get it to work right. Whenever one or more other attacking legendary creatures you control die, untap all creatures you control after this phase. There's additional combat. This ability only triggers once per turn. I could see a scenario where something like Skrelv dies in combat, and then you just get the extra combat. We don't have a ton of legendary creatures that have small power and toughnesses. But remember that it doesn't say that they have to die in combat. They just have to die while attacking. So I think the perfect human for this is something like Boromir, because we just declare the attack with Boromir, then sacrifice it with Aomer. Now all of our creatures are indestructible, the ones that are on the battlefield, and then we get the extra combat. So I think that seems like a really fun interaction. And then Aowen, Fearless Knight, whenever it comes in, exile target creature an opponent controls with greater power than Aowen, so it has to be 3 or 4 or greater. And legendary creatures you control gain protection from each of that creature's colors on a turn. And again, it's just the creatures that are out. So that can be kind of the tough part, is like trying to remember, what was out when when Aowen's ability went off and that kind of things. And then the last card is Chandra, Acolyte of Flame, making 2 1/1 elemental tokens every turn. And then they go away at the beginning and end step, but we don't care. That's 2 Winota triggers. I return. But hey, I mean, that's it. Like I said, this deck's kind of a slog to explain because it has so many working parts. But I love it because if you're looking for that Boros aggro fun, this deck does such a good job. But let's get into a playtest. I've already tried this playtest a couple times, and if you haven't seen any of my previous videos, I have a hell of a time playtesting with the decks. Like I said, I always have better luck in person than I do on the Mox field, and I'm not sure why, but let's get into it. I like the 2-lander. We'll keep it. Turn 1, we'll throw it on that Plains. Seeing the Talisman there in the open hand just makes me want to do this even more. I could certainly throw the Talisman down here and get Winota out next turn, but I don't have any non-human creatures in the battlefield, so I think I'm going to toss the Jailer down here. Next turn, we can get the Plains down, and I kind of like putting the Adeline down here instead of going for the Talisman. Now, this is going to get me in trouble because if I don't top a land, we're in a bad scenario. But I don't think we are because we could still do the Talisman and the Boros Charm. All right, no land, so we get the Talisman down, and we get to go to our Enlightened Tutor. And I think we're just going to find... I'm trying to think. I mean, probably a Soul Ring, right? Or something like that, because we can now play it this turn. So that would be maybe what I would think to go get. Oh, that's right. It goes... I apologize. It goes on top. So we have to think about that. What would we want to put on top for next turn? That would be helpful. I don't know, maybe something like Skrelv. So let's do Skrelv. Let's close and shuffle. I'll put this on top. All right, and then the next turn we would get Winota down here. We have 1 trigger for our things, and then what we would do is try to survive until the next turn. Get this mountain down. Now I would get. Let's think. At this point, again, we're down a couple of triggers, so let's get probably just Dockside and Scrub out. Attack again with the Jailer. Hopefully it didn't die the last time. The tokens that Adeline made are human, so they're not going to trigger. We still could have the Boros Charm up here for protection. And then the next turn we swing with these guys and get more triggers. I think that was kind of a bad opening sequence. We just didn't get a lot of those things that make us the non-token things or the non-human things or the non-human things. So maybe what we need to do this time is pay a little bit more attention. And sometimes with this deck, I find that you kind of have to be willing to mulligan into something like this. So this is 1 mulligan, and we have a card we want to see. We have enough mana for Winota and a card we want to see. So turn 1, I'll slam the command tower down. Turn 2, let's get the Plains down. Play the Krenko's command. So that's going to give us 2 Gobos. Turn 3, we will get the Cavern of Souls down. And I don't really see anything good, so we'll just throw the Arcane Signet down. And here we go, turn 4, we get this and the Crypt. I actually don't think this is, 3/7? I don't think we can get Winota and anything down, but we can leave our protection up. Winota, we get the 2 human triggers, and then it's tough for me to just draw and take another turn because we would have gotten human triggers, but the next turn, get this down, get Bruce Tarl down, give this double strike and lifelink, and again, we can make the same swing, and then whatever humans we had are going to swing as well. Again, this is a really hard deck to represent in a playtest because of all those fun triggers. But let me know what you think of Winota down in the comments. Like I said, I warned you guys off the top. This is not, number 1, not a cheap deck, and number 2, not a weak deck. This is a very strong deck, and it's built to be that way. So I can definitely understand why some people wouldn't want to play a deck like this or build a deck like this, because it's definitely not weak. But it's a deck that I love, and I think I may flirt around with bringing it back. Now, there's so many cool new humans, but I'm going to caveat that with hopefully some of the other decks we talk about this week make me want to build them instead, especially the one tomorrow. This is the deck I'm the most excited about, so hopefully that stops me from rebuilding this deck, because every time I see a new human, this is the deck that I run back to. But let me know what you think of Winota down in the comments. Like if you like Boros aggro, like if you commiserate with me about having a deck that you always want to run back to. Subscribe if you enjoy the content, and I will catch you guys next time.